Ladies and gentlemen, we are finally here. It's Super Bowl weekend. The Chiefs versus the Eagles on Sunday night. God help us all. It's the Super Bowl that nobody wanted. We got Kendrick Lamar doing the halftime show, which is going to get a lot of mixed emotions. I mean, one side is going to love it because Kendrick Lamar is definitely one of the best rappers of this generation. But the other half is not going to like it because either they love Drake to death or they just don't love hip hop in general. Me? I'm somewhere in the middle, but I digress. Welcome to the Super Bowl preview episode. It's your boy OC. I am expecting Tyler to pop up in just a bit, but he's running a little late. Granted, it is a Tuesday afternoon after all, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Just kidding. I don't really give a crap. But yeah, we're gonna preview what's gonna come between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles for the second time in 3 years, and on Fox. So the only difference is that it's not in Arizona; it's in the New Orleans Superdome. So this preview episode, is gonna be a lot different than what it's been in the past. We're gonna just break it down for both teams. You know, which players are gonna step up. What's been the most impressive or disappointing parts about their seasons, and more importantly, what they need to do in order to get their Lombardi trophy back to their respective cities. Kansas City is looking for a three-peat, the first one that an NFL team will accomplish in the history of the league, 106-year history of the league, as a matter of fact. And the Philadelphia Eagles are looking to earn their second Lombardi trophy, the first being in February of 2018 when Nick Foles beat the New England Patriots with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Yeah. 41-33. So a lot is on the line for both teams. I've stalled out for about 2 minutes now. Let's just jump right into it. Let's start with the Kansas City Chiefs, who finished with a 15-2 record, number one seed in the AFC West, number one seed in the AFC in general, and who is really surprised that this team is back in the Super Bowl? I mean, obviously, they've had a lot more adversity than they've had in the past. Rashee Rice went down in the fourth game of the season with a torn ACL. Isaiah Pacheco missed an extended period of time with a broken fibula. Hollywood Brown didn't even play for most of the regular season because of a shoulder injury. The left tackle was a huge issue. Juwan Taylor, he has still been on a slippery slope. Not the worst at blocking, but just way too many penalties. I mean, they've had to ship Joe Thuney out to left tackle and put Mike Caliendo in at left guard just because of all the discombobulation. Jalen Watson, one of their top corners, he missed a good amount of time. He was one of their top corners, definitely one of their rising stars. But Kansas City, as long as they have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Andy Reid and Chris Jones, things were going to be fine. And as long as the core was still intact, then they were going to be a legitimate playoff contender and a legitimate Super Bowl contender no matter what. A lot of their games have come down to the wire. All of them have been a one-score game in the fourth quarter. A few of them have come by double digits. They've only lost 2 games. The first to Buffalo in, I think, late October or mid-November. And the last was against Denver in the final game of the season. But obviously, Kansas City didn't play any of their starters. So nobody really cares about that. And then in the playoffs, they handled their business at home against the Houston Texans. It was only a 1-point game in the third quarter, but Kansas City ended up winning that game by 9 because of 8 sacks from their defense, 3 of them by George Karlaftis. The offense didn't make any mistakes, and the special teams came up with a few key momentum swinging plays. They won that game 23-14. And then in the AFC Championship, another down-to-the-wire matchup with Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills. They were down by 1 heading into the fourth quarter, but a huge fourth-down stop by the Chiefs defense allowed the offense to take a 7-point lead. Buffalo goes ahead and ties up the game. Obviously, we talked about this last week. Kansas City goes down the field to kick a field goal, and on 4th and 5, Steve Spagnuolo dialed up a zero blitz. Dalton Kincaid lets a remarkable pass fall right through his hands, and then Kansas City's offense, being the clutch unit that it is, picks up the 2 first downs that were needed to win the football game and advance to their 3rd straight Super Bowl, and I think it's their 5th in the last 7 years, which is flat out remarkable. They're looking to cement themselves as the greatest dynasty in the National Football League, while Patrick Mahomes has something to prove and that he could be the GOAT over Tom Brady. I don't think that's going to happen, but we'll get into that in just a bit. So one of the questions that I'm going to ask is, what has been the most impressive part about their season? And to me, I don't think it's so much on the offense. I think as long as Patrick Mahomes was under center, we knew that they were going to be a reliable unit because it wasn't as bad as it was last year. Obviously, last year was mired with penalties and drops and just them getting in their own way. This was the exact opposite. Obviously, they required a little bit of luck in a lot of their wins, a pass interference penalty, a toe out of bounds, a blocked field goal, a botched snap, a doinked field goal. But there were plenty of other games where they found ways to win and marched clutch game-winning drives in the final stretch, as we've seen in Cincinnati and against the Chargers and against Tampa, against San Francisco, so forth and so forth. So I knew that with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, we knew that they were going to be the biggest reason why they would be, a legitimate Super Bowl threat. Even with all the injuries that they've been dealing with, they've had plenty of guys that stepped up. I mean, they traded for DeAndre Hopkins in the middle of the season. They signed Kareem Hunt back, and, he's really stepped up in the running game. Obviously, you've got guys like Justin Watson and Juju Smith-Schuster really stepping up into bigger roles. Noah Gray, I mean, he's one of the most underrated second-option tight ends in the National Football League. And, with that interior offensive line, you knew that you were going to get some protection, even with Jawan Taylor and the left tackle, kind of being a little bit of a liability. But what's really been more impressive to me is just their defense continuing to thrive. Because normally, when you're at your peak, there are definitely, when you head into the next season, there are going to be signs of stagnation and regression. Yet I've never seen that. I mean, obviously, they lost Jalen Watson and they lost L'Jarius Sneed because they traded him to Tennessee before the season started. But, I mean, you got Chris Jones, who signed a mega 4-year deal. George Karlaftis rising to be one of the best edge rushers in the National Football League. Michael Dana, same thing with him. Charles Omenihu, coming back in the middle of the season because of an injury. You got the linebacking core filled with Drew Tranquill and Nick Bolton. I mean, Trent McDuffie, an all-pro corner, filling his role in the slot. You got two safeties really stepping up in Najee Johnson and Brian Cook. So really, it's just Steve Spagnuolo being the best coordinator in football, finding ways to maximize the best out of his players. I mean, he's learned so much from his field experiences with the Rams and with, the New Orleans Saints and the Giants when he came back in 2015 when they didn't have an outstanding defense and they kind of wasted an outstanding season from Eli Manning, in my opinion. But I'm actually surprised that Steve Spagnuolo didn't get accepted for a head coaching job, because over the last really since he's been in Kansas City, he's only had one season where he didn't have a top 10 scoring defense, and they still won the Super Bowl because of a huge fumble in the second quarter, or a huge scoop and score from Nick Bolton in the second quarter that made the difference in a 38-35 victory. Obviously, the offense got the job done in the fourth quarter, but at the same time, wow, Boston is up by 18. Sorry, didn't want to get off track here. What I was saying is, the offense, they obviously took control of that second half and made the plays down the stretch to win that football game. But if it wasn't for that scoop and score, the Eagles probably would have beaten Patrick Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts would have only been the third quarterback to beat Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs. So I think it's just Kansas City's defense being able to trust each other, not get off track, focus on the mission, and knowing what it takes to get the job done. And while they didn't look the best in the AFC Championship against Josh Allen, you kind of expected Josh Allen to have one of the games of his life. And number two, and more importantly, Kansas City came up with two huge stops in the fourth quarter to recapture all the momentum that was needed to win that football game. And I think in this Super Bowl, they're on pace to do it again. So I can't wait to see what happens there. Now, when it comes to the most disappointing part about their season, to me, I just think that it's how they escape almost every single game this year. And I'm not saying that, the Chiefs should easily be 9-8 or 8-9 or something, because I know that, listen, we all knew that they were going to win the division. We knew that they were going to be in the AFC Championship. But the thing that just really frustrated me the most, especially in the regular season, is that when they went up against an inferior opponent, they never really put them away or dominate the game the way that they were supposed to. Instead, they just let the opponents hang around, and they either let themselves destruct in the final minutes, or Kansas City would realize, oh crap, we have a football game to win, and then just wake up when it was, really time to get it done. We saw that twice against the Raiders. We saw that twice against the Chargers, Baltimore, Cincinnati, Atlanta, the Carolina Panthers. They let that game come down to a walk-off field goal. Tampa Bay, it came down to overtime. New Orleans and San Francisco, the two double-digit victories they had, or two of the double-digit victories they had, it was only a 3-point game heading into the fourth quarter. And Pittsburgh, they were only up by 6. So I'm not saying that the Chiefs were bad or that they were just overrated or that they never really deserved to make the Super Bowl. It's just the fact that when you're that great and when you have as great of a quarterback as Patrick Mahomes and as great of a coach as Andy Reid and as great of a defensive mind as Steve Spagnuolo, you expect your team to at least do what they are supposed to do, which is, take control of the game and make sure that they don't have any room to breathe. And in a lot of their games, they did that. Now, against teams like Baltimore and Cincinnati and Buffalo, I could take that because those are the teams that are trying to compete with you and trying to take you down from the top of the mountain. But when you're going up against sub-500 teams and all you're doing is not making the plays necessary through 45 to 55 minutes, then a lot of the talk is going to be like, all right, what's going to happen when they get to the playoffs? But to their credit, they never let the noise affect them. And in 2 playoff games against Houston and Buffalo, they did what I wanted them to do all season long, which was, get off to a fast start, work through the motions throughout the rest of the game. And then when it comes to the fourth quarter, dominate and take control. And that's exactly what they've done. And that's why they've won the AFC for a 3rd straight year. Now, here's the third point that I want to get into. A box office player that I want to have a big game. And that is a receiver that I mentioned earlier, DeAndre Hopkins, because, he's been in the league for about 11 to 12 years. This is really the first season where he's gone past the second round and has at least advanced to a Super Bowl. And he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's one of the best receivers of this generation by far. When he was in his prime, he's literally was one of the most athletic receivers in the game, an incredible catch radius, a 50-50 go ball guy with almost every quarterback that he's played with, from Ryan Fitzpatrick to Brian Hoyer to Tom Savage to Deshaun Watson to even guys like TJ Yates and Kyler Murray and, Will Levis and Ryan Tannehill, so forth and so forth. And now he's finally on a team that is good and that can compete for championships and that has a transcendent quarterback in Patrick Mahomes and a genius of an offensive mind in Andy Reid. And, he's finally in the situation that he can not necessarily thrive in, but that he can operate in and make sure that, he's not just going to be left out to dry, because when he was in Tennessee the last 2 years, they weren't using him properly. And he was frustrated because A, they weren't winning, and B, because he wasn't getting the ball the way that he was normally accustomed to when he had a reliable quarterback at his disposal. But I really want DeAndre Hopkins to have a big game. I'm not saying that it's guaranteed going to happen because, the Eagles have the best defense in football. But listen, someone's going to shut down Travis Kelce. You know that Xavier Worthy's going to get a lot of attention because he's the fastest receiver coming out of the draft. Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt have legitimized themselves as a really solid running back duo. And, Hollywood Brown has really started to mesh his way into the offense since he's come back from that shoulder injury. So I really want DeAndre Hopkins to, what's the right way to say this? I want him to get the lack of attention that he normally got in his prime, because you leave DeAndre Hopkins open with, a subpar corner or somebody that, is not going to have his way with DeAndre Hopkins, then good luck, because he still has plenty of juice left in him. And, like I said, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. And I think in a game like this, he's been waiting for this his whole life. And I can't wait to see. I really hope that he just, puts on a show, because it's been a long time coming. And like I said, he's finally on a team that, can give him that opportunity and give him that chance. Now, a player under the radar that I'm really hoping to step up as Sam Hauser drills at corner 3 to give the Celtics an 18-point lead. Juwan Taylor, obviously the right tackle for the Kansas City Chiefs. Last year, he was the most penalized player in the league. A lot of holding calls, a lot of false starts. Not the worst blocking tackle because we knew that he warranted himself partly because of his ability to block, especially in the passing game. Not so much in the run game, but definitely in the passing game. And the next year, penalties still piled up. Obviously, the number wasn't as much as it was last year, but he was still one of the most penalized players in the league. And, the blocking is still at the levels that it was at last year, but at the same time, if this continues to pile up in the Super Bowl, especially when you're going up against Josh Sweat and Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and Bryce Huff, then you're going to be in for a long night because Vic Fangio, what makes him so great as a defensive coordinator is his ability to exploit matchups. And it's going to be the same thing in the secondary when you have to deal with, Darius Slay and Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean going up against those thoroughbreds at Kansas City. But in the pass rush and in that front four, if Jawan Taylor is the liability that we've seen him on primetime stages and definitely a lot of the regular season over the past 2 seasons, then, they're just going to be in a lot of second and third and long situations. And all Kansas City is going to do is stall out because the Chiefs don't have the perfect personnel that can easily exploit, Philadelphia's secondary. Because I got to say, the Philly defense, it is 10 times better than what it was 2 years ago when they made the Super Bowl last year, or when they made the Super Bowl against Kansas City, and it came down to a walk-off field goal from Harrison Butker. The pieces are different, but the coaching is different, the scheme's a lot different, and more importantly, the mentality is different because it has done a complete 180 since last year when they were one of the worst units in football. So, Jawan Taylor, this is the game that you need to step up in because if they lose this game and it's because of their inability to protect Patrick Mahomes or because of the amount of penalties that they've piled up, the biggest scapegoat they're going to look at is you because you're the one that has, stacked up the most flags. So, all right. And last but not least, the Chiefs will win if, finish the sentence. I mean, there are a lot of directions I can go towards. I mean, if the defense balls out and shuts down Saquon Barkley, that seems a little bit obvious because, Philadelphia's offense is Saquon or bust. If he does not have a good game and, and Philadelphia's offense has to force Jalen Hurts to throw the football 30 to 40 times, I don't know if they're going to win that football game because the more that they stall out, the more worn out that Philadelphia's defense is going to become. And Philadelphia's defense has been absolutely spectacular all season long, but Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in football. And if he wins this Super Bowl, he's going to pass Joe Montana as the second best quarterback in NFL history. And to some people, he's going to surpass Tom Brady as the GOAT. So the longer that you're on the field against Patrick Mahomes, the more worn out you're going to be. And more importantly, the more momentum that Patrick Mahomes is going to have because you give him the ball last in the final 2 minutes with a chance to win the football game, he's going to do it. I don't care who it's against. It could be against, the Eagles or the Panthers or the Raiders or even the freaking Jacksonville Jaguars for all we know, even though they've been a complete S show this season. If Patrick Mahomes has the ball last, they're winning the Super Bowl and they're going to get the three-peat, and the Chiefs are going to be the biggest villains in the history of the National Football League because we've never seen this before. So, bottom line, long story short, you give Patrick Mahomes the ball back, then you better watch out because there's no way in hell, unless Patrick Mahomes has the worst game of his life and flames out the way that he did against Tom Brady in Super Bowl 55 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, then there's no one I'm betting against. There's no reason for me to believe that I'm going to bet against Patrick Mahomes in a situation like that. All right, now let's set the stage for the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's start last year after their 31-9 playoff loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Last year, they started the season 10-1. They were the reigning NFC champions, and it looked like they were going to get up to as dominant of a start as they did last year when they went 13-4, won the number 1 seed in the NFC, and advanced to the Super Bowl with a loaded offense and an elite defense. The year after that, though, after they started 10-1, everything completely imploded. Their defense was flat out awful the whole season. They demoted Sean Desai to defensive coordinator and gave Matt Patricia play calling duties, which is just as pathetic and as atrocious as you would expect. The offense was completely one-dimensional. They were so simplistic and predictable, and when they made it to the playoffs, when they stumbled into the playoffs, rather, everything completely came crashing down. The offensive line couldn't handle the blitz. Jalen Hurts couldn't get the ball to, A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith the way they wanted to. They never ran the football, and as a result, they kept stalling out. And Philadelphia's defense just, fell apart as the game wore on. This season, they started off the season 2-2. And before the bye week, they just got it demolished by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 33-16. I think that was the final score, albeit without A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. But still, it was a devastating loss. And a lot of the talk surrounding the Philadelphia Eagles was, is Nick Sirianni even going to last the whole season? Because him and Jalen Hurts were definitely at odds with each other. So they had 2 weeks to figure it out. Same thing with the defense, because not only did they give up 33 points to Baker Mayfield, but 2 weeks ago, they completely collapsed against the Atlanta Falcons in the final minutes when they had a winnable situation in their hands, only for Saquon Barkley to drop a potential game-sealing pass and for the defense to completely implode in the final drive against Kirk Cousins to lose the game 22-21. But after the bye week, they completely took off. They went 12-1 the rest of the way. Their defense ended up being the best in the National Football League. Saquon Barkley set, a franchise record with over 2,000 rushing yards. He had a chance to actually set the all-time rushing record in a season that Eric Dickerson set a long time ago. I think it was 1984, 1985, somewhere around then. But the point is, they did a complete 180, and Nick Sirianni stayed out of the way, even with, a couple of what the heck moments, against Cleveland and against Jacksonville. And, their one loss was against Washington because Jalen Hurts was ruled out of the second half because of a concussion. And Jaden Daniels, even though with 5 turnovers, threw 5 touchdown passes to win that football game. But, besides that, Philadelphia just went on a tear throughout the rest of the season. And in the playoffs, they mainly handled their business and had all 3 of their playoff games in their home building. They took care of Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers by forcing 3 interceptions. The next game, they won in a nail-biting fashion to the Los Angeles Rams because of 2 huge game-breaking touchdown runs from Saquon Barkley. And then in the NFC Championship against the Washington Commanders, the defense forced 4 turnovers, and Saquon Barkley had 3 rushing touchdowns, and Philadelphia had over 230 rushing yards on the ground to win the game 55-23. So Philadelphia is trying to prove that you could still win games and still win a championship as long as you run the ball extremely well and play great defense. And Jalen Hurts has not exactly been elite, but he's making a lot of winning plays. And he's just, he's not messing up. It's pretty much being a game manager. And in the Super Bowl, he's probably going to need to have the best game of his life if the Philadelphia Eagles want to win another Lombardi trophy. So the most impressive part about their season, like I said, was just their ability to dominate after the bye week and for them to, completely trend in the right direction. Because, listen, after Nick Sirianni was chirping at the fans, we didn't even know if they were going to win a playoff game, even with the amount of talent that they had at their disposal. But, to his credit, he's learned that he's got to be more mature. He's got to, not be as vocal as he'd been in the past. And more importantly, he's got to show signs of leadership rather than just to be one of the guys. So I got to give Nick Sirianni credit for that. I got to give Saquon Barkley a lot of love because he's proven once again that he's the best running back in football. 2,000 rushing yards, easily won the rushing title. And in the postseason, he's been on an absolute tear. So, Kansas City is going to do everything it takes to shut that down. But really what's been the most disappointing is, the biggest X factor for Philadelphia in the Super Bowl, which is their up and down passing game. On paper, they should have one of the best passing attacks in football because Jalen Hurts is one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. And if you want to, be objective or if you want to be a hater, you could definitely say top 10. But you have A.J. Brown, you have Devontae Smith, you have Dallas Goedert. Your offensive line has a lot of stalwarts and, Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson and Cam Jurgens and Landon Dickerson and Mekhi Becton. He's completely revived his career, and he's proven that he's a better right guard than a right tackle, without a doubt. But the point is, on paper, you know that they should easily be a top 5 or top 10 passing attack. But it's been on a lot of slippery slopes. A.J. Brown, he hasn't been utilized the way that, he's been expected to. Did a little better a couple weeks ago in the NFC Championship against Washington, but, there were times where he was more known for reading books on the sideline than he was having dominant performances. So will it happen again? We'll see. But in this game, they cannot afford to have another, mediocre, okay passing attack. Again, if Patrick Mahomes has one of the worst games of his career, maybe they could get away with it. But if they can't run the football and their offense, completely goes one-dimensional, then, yeah, they're going to get blown out like 35-13. And I'm not exaggerating, because when Philadelphia goes one-dimensional, then that's a very good sign that this game is going to be completely over. So that's what I'm most disappointed about, and it's what I think needs to happen if Philadelphia wants to win the Super Bowl. The box office player that I want to have a big game is Jalen Hurts, because 2 years ago when he lost to the Super Bowl to Patrick Mahomes, he pretty much did all he could. Unfortunately, it was a lost fumble that was the biggest difference in the football game, because Nick Bolton goes all the way for a touchdown. They go up 14-7, and even though Philadelphia went up ahead by 10 at halftime, if that fumble doesn't happen, Philadelphia is winning that Super Bowl. Even with an exemplary performance from Patrick Mahomes in the second half, that scoop and score literally gave the Chiefs all the momentum that they needed to hang on and win that game by 3 points. So I need Jalen Hurts to do what he did in that Super Bowl. The only difference is you can't turn the football over, especially against a guy like Patrick Mahomes, because one little slip up and one tiny mistake, I say it time and time again, one little error is going to determine the entire outcome of the football game, and Jalen Hurts is going to be looked at completely differently than what he's, been normally viewed in the past. But a player under the radar that I'm hoping to step up is not who you would think of. My guy would be linebacker Oren Burks. And here's the reason why. Last year, he was a backup linebacker for the San Francisco 49ers. Last year, obviously, they won the NFC. They made it to the Super Bowl. And, Oren Burks was a backup to Dre Greenlaw, who was, obviously one of the rising starters and, proved that he could be a Pro Bowl, All-Pro caliber player. But in the second quarter against the Kansas City Chiefs, Dre Greenlaw, as he's trying to rush onto the field, I should say, he tears his Achilles, and he's out for the rest of the season, and he missed a good portion of this year, which thrusted Oren Burks into the starting lineup for the entire second half. What does Oren Burks do against Kansas City? He gets targeted 9 times, gives up 9 catches for 90 yards, along with a touchdown reception. Oren Burks has a chance to completely do the exact opposite against the same team in the same circumstances. The only difference is he's going to be a starter throughout the entire ball game, because Nakobe Dean is out for the rest of the season with an injury. Brandon Graham is going to come back, which is a huge plus, but he's not responsible for the middle of the field. I think that the player that needs to step up the most is Oren Burks. Not just in the run game, because Kansas City is going to do its best to run the football because they got 2 effective backs in Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt. But more importantly, Patrick Mahomes, the number one thing he's going to do when he sees the field, when he drops back in the pocket is, all right, where's Oren Burks at? Because if he's matched up against Travis Kelce or Noah Gray or even one of our running backs, then that's who I'm going to look to first. It's what Mahomes did a couple weeks ago against the Buffalo Bills. He said, all right, where's Kyer Elam? All right, I'm just going to go boom, 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 boom. Hollywood Brown's open, DeAndre Hopkins, Xavier Worthy. I don't really care. As long as he's matched up on Kyer Elam, most of the time, I'm going to throw the ball his way because I know Kyer Elam is not going to stop it. So, Oren Burks, if you're listening to this, I doubt you are, but you get my point. This is the day for you to have the game of your life and to completely redeem your career, because a lot of people are pointing to that as one of the biggest reasons why the 49ers defense completely imploded. But the thing is, this Eagles defense has a lot more talent than it had a couple of years ago when they lost to Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl the first time. So Oren Burks, my man, show me what you got. Because if you post the same numbers that you did in that Super Bowl, then it's just going to be another walk in the park for this Kansas City offense. So to conclude this episode, the Eagles will win the Super Bowl if Jalen Hurts has the game of his life. I mean, I don't know what more you can say, because you know Philadelphia is going to heavily rely on Saquon Barkley, and you know that their defense is going to live up to the task, at least for the first half. But Jalen Hurts needs to have a similar performance than he did in the last Super Bowl that he was in. You know, put up a lot of yards, score a lot of touchdowns, and do everything it takes to keep this football team in the game. Because, like I said, if you just have an okay performance, and if you just have one of those games where you're just punting, and you're only getting 3 points instead of 6, then Patrick Mahomes is going to have all the momentum, and he's going to have plenty of the juice that he needs in the fourth quarter to take control of that football game and remind us why he's the best quarterback and why he's going to be cemented as one of the all-time greats in the history of the National Football League. So, Jalen Hurts, you know, last year he had him walking off the field with the Chiefs confetti falling down as his profile picture, or as his screensaver on his cell phone. He's got his chance. He got what he wanted. It's like George Kittle. He's going to come back with a vengeance. Jalen Hurts, we know he's a cold-blooded killer. We know that, you know, if he's mad, you don't want to poke the bear. All right, let's see what Let's see what you've got. Same thing with Oren Burks. Jalen Hurts, you got to be the biggest reason why the Eagles win the Super Bowl. Because we know the Chiefs are going to do everything they can to shut down Saquon Barkley. And we know that if Patrick Mahomes if the Eagles defense is on the field for too long, it's only going to be a matter of time before they completely wear it down. Unless Patrick Mahomes decides to fall apart and decides to, you know, stumble and bumble and, you know, look like crap, like he did against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in that only Super Bowl loss. So now we get to the moment of truth. Who's winning the Super Bowl and what is going to be the final score? All right. So I pretty much know how this game is going to go, or at least I think I know how this game is going to go. The Eagles are going to get off to a fast start, like the Chiefs normally let happen when they're in the Super Bowl. The Chiefs are going to fall behind, whether it's by 7 points or whether it's by double digits. They're going to be down, 20-10 or maybe 13-3 at one point in the game. But in the fourth quarter, the Chiefs are going to wake up. They're going to toughen up. They're going to bow up, and they're going to make all the plays that they need to make on both sides of the ball to close the deal, to win the football game, and in the end, hoist another Lombardi trophy. Yeah, the NFL scriptwriters got us again. We know that, they're going to do everything it takes to, make Taylor Swift happy, to make the Chiefs fans happy, to make Nick Wright gloat on national television, and to make all the biased sports analysts say that Patrick Mahomes is the GOAT over Tom Brady, because we all know that it's just disrespectful and it's just insulting to say that Patrick Mahomes is going to usurp Tom Brady as the greatest quarterback in the history of the National Football League. Just because, A, Brady beat him twice in the playoffs. 2, because Brady went through a tougher path. And 3, Patrick Mahomes was in the best situation that he could have asked for out of anybody else that, has, suited up in the National Football League. The only other guy that I could say was remotely close to that is Joe Montana. So I'll get into more of it later if we, have a lengthier discussion, if Tyler, comes back, in the next week or maybe in 2 weeks. But yeah, that's just, if anybody's saying that, you either have a grudge against him, you're either jealous of him, or you're just, you just want somebody else to take the mantle and you just don't have any objective facts to show for it. So that's my take, but I think the Chiefs are going to win. I don't think it's going to be a high scoring of a game as it was 2 years ago when the Chiefs won 38-35. I think it's going to be low scoring. I think both defenses are going to play exceptionally great. And more importantly, I just believe that whoever has the ball in their hands last is going to put together a game-winning drive, because we know both teams are incredibly talented, but you give Patrick Mahomes or Jalen Hurts a chance to win the game in the final minutes, then you know that they're going to do whatever it takes to, you know, show everybody what they've got. I know I've used that phrase a lot, but you know the point. But I'll say the Kansas City Chiefs win this game 23-20. And again, it's going to come down to another Patrick Mahomes game-winning drive. If it comes down to overtime, I would not be surprised one bit. But if there's one quarterback that I'm not going to bet against in this stage, like Tom Brady in the past, it's going to be number 15 for the Kansas City Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes. And with that, I sign off. Make sure you like and subscribe. Enjoy the Super Bowl. Halftime show is supposed to be fun. The commercials might be surprising. I just want a good game. I just want a great and competitive football game. I don't want it to be a blowout, especially if it's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs winning. I just want both teams to have this game come down to the wire. And if the Chiefs win, then I'm not going to be completely mad about that because they would have just proven all season long that they were the better team from start to finish. So, all right, we'll see you back next week for the final episode of the season where we recap the Super Bowl. And have a great rest of your week, everybody. Peace, goodbye.